This is your USMNT Abroad weekend update from October 4th to October 6th of 2024. Hi, if you're new here, I'm Filippo, and welcome to Tactical Manager TV, and welcome to the US Men's National Team Abroad series, where every single Monday we update you on how the Yanks did abroad over the weekend. Now, this weekend, there were some good moments, some very good moments, and there were some really bad moments. But understand that whatever happened with the Americans abroad, it was still not the worst thing to happen this weekend. By far, the worst thing to happen this weekend, or to come out, was the Joker sequel, that monstrosity. If you haven't watched it, keep it that way. Just don't watch it. Actually, the Joker sequel might not even be the worst thing to happen this weekend only. It might be the worst thing to happen in 2024. And there's been a lot of bad things that happened this year, right? We got grouped in the Copa America. There was that also Copa America final disaster. There's like 5 new wars going on. But the Joker sequel is still probably the worst thing to happen. But this video is not a movie review. It's a review of how the Americans did abroad this weekend in the top European leagues. So drop a like if you haven't already. I truly appreciate it, and it helps quite a bit. And next weekend, we don't have the Americans abroad because the US men's national team will be facing Panama in Mauricio Pochettino's very first camp. All right, with that said, let's roll the intro. You hit the like button right now, don't forget, and roll the episode. As always, we start with the top 5 leagues in Europe, the first one being the English Premier League. So why don't we go there and talk about Chris Richards and Matt Turner that play for Crystal Palace. And on Saturday, Matt Turner stayed on the bench the full 90 minutes during their 1-0 loss to Liverpool. So nothing new there. Turner just stays on the bench for them. As for Chris Richards, he is currently injured and he's expected to be out till late October or early November. Next on the list, we have Anthony Robinson, the left back from Fulham. And on Saturday, A-Rob started and played the full 90 minutes for Fulham during their 3-2 loss to Manchester City. So A-Rob had an awful foot mob rating, but I actually watched this game, and I didn't really think he was that bad or even culpable for their loss. Sure, he had a few shaky moments here and there, who doesn't against Manchester City, but he really wasn't that bad, in my opinion. Bernardo Silva was fantastic throughout the game, but A-Rob did a fine job marking him. He was super busy on defense, after all, it is Manchester City, but I thought he held his own and did just fine, and he looked dangerous 1 or 2 moments throughout the game when he was going forward with his crosses. And Manchester City is just a much better team than Fulham, even though, for this specific game, Fulham seemed to be much more effective when they had the ball, or at least much more direct, with lots of verticality. Look at that, Berhalter's favorite word. But you know what? I want to give massive props to Raul Jimenez, yes, the Mexican center forward, for his back-heeled cross assist. You gotta respect that, man. If you didn't see that, go and watch Fulham's first goal. It was a tremendous assist. And rivalry aside, to go through what he did with that head injury and still be playing the Premier League, it's quite remarkable. And as I said, that assist was incredible. I had to watch it like 15 times or so. Next up is Tyler Adams, and we have an update. Yes, if you're wondering, Tyler Adams is still injured with Bournemouth. However, we have good news. He is expected to train with the team during international break, which means he is likely going to be back in October. And if he comes back in October, he should be available for the US men's national team in November, as long as he has no setbacks. And you might be wondering, Tactical Manager, why did you say hopefully about the setbacks, right? Why did you even mention that? Because there's a player we're going to talk about later in the video that was going to be back this weekend, but he had a setback and now he's not back till November, but more on that later. So fingers crossed, and let's hope Tyler Adams is back in 2 to 3 weeks. Now we're gonna head to Italy and talk about the Americans in the Serie A, the Italian first division. The first two being Christian Pulisic and Yunus Musa from Milan. And on Sunday, Christian Pulisic started and played 82 minutes for Milan during their 2-1 loss to Fiorentina. As for Yunus Musa, he stayed on the bench the full 90 minutes. And I think it's fair to say that Christian Pulisic was Milan's best player this game. He didn't really have any bad moments, and he was decisive in 2 occasions. The first penalty kick that Milan wasted, which by the way, I said first because they actually wasted 2 penalty kicks, but we're going to talk more about that later. So back to the first one, Christian Pulisic put a great through ball while he was falling down that led to the penalty kick for Milan. Then, for some stupid, idiotic, moronic reason, they let Theo Hernandez take it and waste it. I believe it was Theo Hernandez's birthday, so I guess Milan's not a serious football or soccer club in this case, and they just decided to give Theo Hernandez a birthday gift. Let him take the penalty kick, and he wasted it. But then in the second half, Milan had another penalty kick, and this time Tammy Abraham decided to take it. And yes, he wasted it as well. Pulisic has never missed a penalty kick in his professional career for club and country. He is 10 for 10. So you tell me, why didn't Christian Pulisic take any of these penalty kicks? Not taking one of them would already have been a major issue. Now, why didn't he take any of them? But don't worry, that did not stop Pulisic from scoring, because he scored Milan's goal this game. He tried to rescue the team, and he scored off a beautiful, somewhat volley kick. He stretched that leg as if he was Michael Jordan in Space Jam, stretching that arm for a dunk. It was a beautiful goal, truly. And look, due to the penalty kicks, I am gonna give Fonseca, Milan's coach, the dumbass door award. He is the coach. He is responsible for who takes the penalty kick, and Pulisic is the best one Milan has. It's not debatable. Sure, ultimately the players are the ones who convert it or not, but the coach has to establish that the best player takes it. It's just common sense. And you know what? Fonseca had something to say about it after the game, and I quote him. And he said, "The penalty taker is Pulisic. I don't know why the players changed their minds. I spoke to him and said it must never happen again." You Muppet. You bloody freaking Muppet. He literally sounds like Greg Berhalter. As the coach and leader of the team, he should have intervened, or at least established that Pulisic is the penalty kick taker no matter what. No matter who grabs the ball also, because apparently that's why Tammy Abraham took it. Moronic decisions and lack of leadership from the coaching staff led to this loss. And it's kind of stupid because with that quote, he made it seem like he was blaming Pulisic, saying pretty much, "I wanted Pulisic to take it, but the players just changed it." It shouldn't be allowed to happen. It seems like the players just don't respect the coach. Maybe he should leave. Maybe he should get fired. But now let's move on to the Americans that play for Juventus, and they are Timothy Weah and Weston McKennie. And on Sunday, McKennie started off the bench and was subbed in the 62nd minute during Juve's 1-1 draw with Cagliari. Weston was probably being rested after the midweek Champions League game against Leipzig. As for Timothy Weah, he is out of the US men's national team camp. He didn't even make the bench for Juventus this weekend because he's still recovering from injury. He probably had a minor setback because he was originally in the US men's national team roster, and he has now been replaced by Alejandro Zendejas from Club America. Next up in Italy, and actually the last American that I'll talk about from Italy, is Gianluca Busio that plays for Venezia. And on Friday, Busio started and played the full 90 minutes for Venezia during their 2-1 loss to Verona. And I hope this does not happen, but Venezia is definitely one of the top candidates to get relegated this season in Italy. There are roughly 5 to 6 teams that I have seen that have been quite poor, but Venezia is definitely among the worst ones so far. Unfortunately, they seem to be a yo-yo club. Next up, we have the Americans that play in Germany, in the Bundesliga. The first one being Giovanni Reyna from Borussia Dortmund. So Gio Reyna was expected to be back this weekend, but he had a setback, and now he's not expected to be back till mid-November. Yes, you heard that right. Which means the next US men's national team camp that Gio Reyna would be available for is in March of 2025. And to me, when it comes to Gio, both sides of the extremists are wrong, in my opinion, of course. To say he's done at age 21 is just complete nonsense. He's far from done, and he's far too talented to just give up on him. However, to deny the fact that he's actually injury prone and has not done crap for his club for the past 12 to 18 months is pure delusion. He is more injury prone than my fat drunk uncle that pulls his hammy every time we play pickup soccer during the family barbecue. I'm going to say one thing that might be controversial. The US men's national team cannot count on Gio Reyna. Not because he ain't good enough, just because he ain't available enough. I want to believe he will live up to his potential, but I would not count on it. There are some good news coming from Dortmund though. The 18-year-old American winger Cole Campbell did make the bench for Dortmund for the very first time this weekend, so we got that going for us, which I guess it's nice. Next up, we have Joe Scally from Borussia, not Dortmund. And on Friday, Joe Scally started and played 76 minutes as a right back for Gladbach during their 2-1 loss to Augsburg. The other player we would have talked about would have been Kevin Paredes from Wolfsburg, but he's still injured. He'll be back one day. Eventually, he'll be back. I don't know when, but he'll be back. So let's skip Kevin Paredes and talk about Leonard Maloney from Heidenheim. And on Sunday, Maloney started and played 67 minutes for Heidenheim during their 1-0 loss to Leipzig. And then we're going to leave Germany and go to Spain so we can talk about two Americans that play in La Liga. The first one being Luca De La Torre from Celta Vigo. He is still dealing with an ankle injury and was not available for them this weekend. So let's skip on Luca and talk about Johnny Cardoso from Real Betis. And on Sunday, Johnny started and played the full 90 minutes for Real Betis during their 1-0 loss to Sevilla. This was a tough game. It's a big derby there, and Johnny did fine. Nothing outstanding and nothing bad. He played his role for Betis. He started for them during the midweek and the weekend derby. As I said a few weeks ago, he is a starter for them. There were just some weird rotations going on early in the season. Now we got some bad news on Johnny. Johnny Cardoso is out of the US men's national team camp. He has a minor knee injury, nothing serious, but he will be using the international break to rest and recover. He played the past 2 games for Real Betis with a knock on his knee, obviously, as I said, so he will be replaced by Tanner Tessman this camp. Johnny will not be available, unfortunately. Next up, we have the Americans that play in France, in Ligue 1. The first one being Florentin Balogun from Monaco. And on Saturday, Balogun started and played 64 minutes for Monaco during their 2-1 win over Reims. We got good news and we got bad news, but the bad news outweighs the good news, because we are US men's national team fans. We are here to suffer, feel pain, anxiety, and mental agony. Being a US men's national team fan is just delightful. But let's start the good news. The good news is Balogun scored for the 3rd consecutive weekend, and it was a beauty. He took a perfect first touch, used the quick second touch to blow by the defender, followed by a clinical left-footed chip finish over a diving goalkeeper. A true golazzo from the best center forward the US men's national team currently has. No other center forwards can pull goals like this. Now the bad news is he got injured with a dislocated shoulder. Who knows for how long he'll be out for? I have seen many players recover quickly from this in like a week or two, like Weston McKennie. In some cases, it can take up to 6 weeks. But he is now out of the US men's national team October camp, and he has been replaced by Brendan Vasquez from Monterrey in Liga MX. The next player in France would have been Caleb Wiley, but he's still dealing with a minor knee tendonitis and was not available for Strasbourg over the weekend. Like most US men's national team players, they're like all injured. We literally have like an entire starting 11 of players that are injured. So let's skip on Caleb Wiley and talk about Mark McKenzie from Toulouse. And on Saturday, McKenzie started and played the full 90 minutes for Toulouse during their 2-1 loss to Lille. I wasn't able to watch this game, but I did watch the highlights, and McKenzie was not culpable on any of the goals. It wasn't his fault. That doesn't mean he played well, but as a center back, that matters. If you watched him play, let me know how Mark McKenzie did in the overall game, but he had no blame on any of the goals. Next up is Tanner Tessman from Lyon. And on Sunday, Tessman started off the bench and was sent in around minute 74 for Lyon during their 2-0 win over Nantes. He played fine, he kept it simple, and defensively, he wasn't really tested throughout those 15 to 20 minutes. And Tessman will be in the US men's national team camp this week, as he will replace Johnny Cardoso, as I said earlier in the video. Now, if you made it this far in the video, don't forget to drop a like. Let's try to hit 1,000 likes. It helps the channel quite a bit, and I thank you for it. Okay, now let's go to the Netherlands and talk about the Americans that play in the Eredivisie. The first ones being the PSV boys, Malik Tillman, Richie Ledesma, Ricardo Pepi, and Dest, even though Dest is still not playing because he's recovering from a torn ACL. And on Saturday, Malik Tillman and Richie Ledesma both started for PSV during their 2-1 win over Sparta Rotterdam. Now, with this win, PSV starts the season with 8 wins in 8 Eredivisie games. Complete dominance, just like last season. Tillman played 83 minutes for them, while Richie Ledesma played as a right back because the starting right back was injured. And Ledesma was subbed out also in the 83rd minute, but unfortunately, it was due to an injury. As for Ricardo Pepi, he started off the bench and came in the 69th minute. Nice. For an injured Luke de Jong. However, de Jong should not miss any time, and he's expected to be available right after this international break. With Balogun possibly out and Gio Reyna also out, Ricardo Pepi and Malik Tillman have a big opportunity to show Mauricio Pochettino what they can do this October camp. So they better take care of business. Next up, we have the two Americans that play for Utrecht, also in the Eredivisie, and they are Taylor Booth and Paxton Aronson. And on Saturday, Paxton Aronson started and played the full 90 minutes for Utrecht during their 2-1 win over Walwisk. I think that's how you say their name. I also don't care. No Americans play for them. As for Taylor Booth, he was not available due to injury. It's been a rough start for the season for the American winger. So let's talk about Paxton Aronson. Paxton was the man of the match, and he scored a goal for the second consecutive weekend. Here's the thing about Paxton. I am 99% certain that all of the games that he struggled this season with Utrecht were when he played on the wing. When he played as a midfielder, he was at worst average and at best the man of the match. He even scored last weekend when he played as a midfielder. What's the moral of the story here? Paxton Aronson is a midfielder and not a winger. Keep in mind that starting for Utrecht and being one of their top players is not easy. It really isn't. They are currently the second best place in the Eredivisie, or actually, shall I say, the second best team in the Eredivisie, only behind PSV. So good for Paxton. I'm truly rooting for him. I'm happy for the kid and hopefully he continues to thrive, but he has to play in the midfield, not on the wing. Now let's go back to England and talk about the Americans that play in the EFL Championship, which is the second division of England. The first one being Josh Sargent from Norwich. And on Saturday, Sargent started and played 81 minutes for Norwich during their 4-0 win over Hull City. I said that last weekend, Sargent was on a 4-game goal drought, and I was hoping it would end soon. So he scored off a penalty kick during the midweek, and this weekend versus Hull City, he scored with a one-hit finish off a low cross, an open play. An easy finish, but the off-the-ball movement and timing of the play were tough. He did, however, miss a penalty kick this same game. He hit the post. Regardless, Norwich won, Sargent scored, and he now has 4 goals and 3 assists in the EFL Championship this season with 9 games played. Next on the list is Brenden Aaronson from Leeds United. And on Friday, Aaronson started and played the full 90 minutes for Leeds during their 2-2 draw with Sunderland. You know, Aaronson had a good opportunity to score. He did also come close to getting an assist. He probably should have had a goal contribution this game. I want to say he played well, but I kind of have mixed feelings about his performance this game. Definitely not a bad one, I'll say that. Leeds also probably should have won this game, even though it ended 2-2, but you know, Meslier decided to poop the bed late in the game. Yeah, if you missed it, go watch the second goal that Sunderland scored at like the 96th or 97th minute. It was bad. It looked like MLS goalkeeping. But let's skip on Brenden Aaronson. Actually, not skip. Let's move on from Brenden Aaronson and talk about Haji Wright from Coventry. And on Saturday, Haji Wright started and played the full 90 minutes as a left winger for Coventry during their 2-1 loss to Sheffield Wednesday. When I say left winger, very often he looks like an inside forward, and Haji did fine this game. He hit the post off a header in the second half, which was where he came the closest to getting a goal contribution. Sure, the header wasn't great, it was a bit awkward, but if it had gone in, it would have been a goal, and a goal is a goal. Regardless, it seems like Haji bounced back with better performances this weekend and during the midweek because he was off to a rough start this season. After Haji, it would have been Horvath, but he's still benched for Cardiff City, which is probably the worst team in the EFL Championship. It's embarrassing, and unfortunately Horvath is in the US Men's National Team roster. But let's skip on Ethan Horvath and talk about Aidan Morris that plays for Middlesbrough. And on Saturday, Aidan Morris started and played 89 minutes for Middlesbrough during their 2-1 loss to Watford. Last but not least in England, we have Luca Coleosho from Burnley. And on Saturday, Luca Coleosho started and played the full 90 minutes for Burnley during their 0-0 draw with Preston North End. Coleosho has been called in once again to Italy's U21s this international window, and he accepted a call-up. Now let's move on from England and go to Scotland so we can talk about the two Americans that play for Celtic, and they are Austin Trusty and Cameron Carter-Vickers. And on Sunday, Trusty started and played the full 90 minutes for Celtic during their 2-1 win over Ross County. As for Cameron Carter-Vickers, he was still not available due to a toe injury, and he's obviously not going to be with the US Men's National Team this October. Alright everyone, thank you very much for watching. Don't forget to drop a like before you go and a random comment to boost us in the YouTube algorithm. Now I know you're going to say, why are you not covering the Americans in Liga MX? After all, Brendan Vasquez and Zendejas were called in to replace injured players. We needed a complete injury crisis, which we're going to go through that in the match previews, how many players are injured, for these guys to get called in. If they go into camp and they do well, and I feel like they could be fighting for a roster spot, we're going to start covering the Americans in Liga MX. So we're going to see how they do this camp against Panama and Mexico, and that's all. Later this week, we will release the Panama preview, the USA versus Panama preview, and I guess there's nothing else to add for this episode. I want to thank you all very much for watching, and have a great day.